This is Jewish Spotlight, a weekly television program presented by Chabad Lubavitch of Long Island, featuring various aspects of Jewish life and Jewish culture. Now, here's your host, Rabbi Tuvi Feldman.
Shalom, and welcome to the Jewish Spotlight. I want to welcome you into our living room, and we're happy to be in your living room. And for the next half hour, we're going to talk about perhaps the most major event that ever happened in the history of mankind. And in order to do that, we have a very special guest who I'm very excited to hear from now. And it's Rabbi David Rhodes, who is the head of Yeshiva Torah Mitzion in North Merrick, Long Island. Rabbi Rhodes, it's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you. It's quite an honor. The last time I was on television was Sheriff John, and I was 6 years old, so this is a step up in the world.
Very good. Well, we're going to talk about this major event that happened in the world, and I want you to be the one to tell everybody what that major event that is, or was, which we're all going to be celebrating in the very near future.
Well, this is quite a major event when you look at the history of the world, because everybody questions, is the Bible true or not? You hear different books coming out, Bible codes, which prove the authenticity of the Torah, the Bible, the Old Testament. But if you look at world history, you'll find the event of Mount Sinai, besides being a great movie for Cecil B. DeMille,
Right.
was an event which was unique in the annals of history. Where in the world did you have a revelation in front of 3 million people at one time? Now, if you look at the Bible and it talks about 600,000 people, that was only the males from 20 years old to 60 years old. There were males above 60, below 20, women, and there's a tremendous group of converts that came out of Egypt.
And children.
And children, too. So you had basically over 3 million people there. Now, imagine such an event. You have this guy Moses. I'm sure he was a man of stature. He had a long white beard. He looked very important. He goes up to the mountain, and I have all this thunder, this lightning. The voice of God comes out.
Right.
And he comes down, and he says, "Did you people hear this? And if nothing happened, nothing at all happened, people will look at him and say, 'Hey, Moses, what are you talking about? We didn't hear anything going on.'"
You've been hearing things again?
You've been hearing things again? Come on. Now, if you think that the Jewish people had such respect for Moses that like they were a cult following, like some Jonestown or something like that, no matter what they said, they followed, that was totally incorrect. All you have to do is read the Torah, read the Bible, and on many occasions they were ready to stone Moses. In fact, as soon as Moses didn't show up, he came a little bit late, the people said, "Oh, Moses is dead, let's make a golden calf."
Right.
So the people were not beholding to Moses. If this wasn't true, if this didn't happen, then you couldn't get those Jews who were skeptical to begin with to believe such an event. Now the question is, what was this event? All right, God came down, talked to the Jewish people, gave them the 10 Commandments, gave them an explanation of the 10 Commandments. But what is so unique about this event which defines us as a Jewish people?
Okay.
Now, to understand that, I'd like to tell a little bit about myself. I have a very, a very unique history per se.
Well, I figure if you were on television when you were 6 years old, you must have had a very unique history.
That Sheriff John show, really, put me over the edge. So basically,
Where are you from?
I'm from Los Angeles, so you can tell I have the actor in me. I was going to go into acting school, but I figured the rabbinate was as good a position as any.
All right.
So what happened was I was brought up, my parents are fantastic people, they should live a long life. I was brought up in a traditional, became more orthodox as time went on. We went to the synagogue on the High Holy Days. I remember my first personal going to the synagogue on my own was when they were honoring the Boy Scouts. I happened to be a Cub Scout.
Okay.
And they said, well, we're giving out pins for the Cub Scouts. So I was never really in a synagogue before on the Sabbath. So I said, well, if they're honoring the Boy Scouts, how's everybody going to be dressed up like a Cub Scout? So my friend and myself, we dressed up like Cub Scouts. We came into the synagogue. What's everybody doing in suits here? Isn't this a Cub Scout event? So that was my first impression of a synagogue. But thank God.
So you grew up like a normal kid, just like you?
Yeah, like everybody else. But
Okay.
I happened to go to an Orthodox day school, which I did learn, or I was supposed to learn. I didn't really pay attention that much. You know how it goes. I was interested in other things. I don't want to discuss it in television because it's, it may come back to haunt me.
Okay.
So I went on and I finished my day school career, high school, and then I decided I wanted to go to UCLA. The Bruins and Lou Alcindor when he was back then. Mm-hmm. I was going to become a dentist. My parents had high hopes for me that they'd have a son who's a professional. But I decided before I went to dental school, I need to discover this Jewish thing. You know, what is it? What's really out there? So my only experience with the yeshiva was reading Chaim Potak's The Chosen, which was a very scary experience for someone who really didn't know what was going on there. But I said, okay, I'm going to go, I'm going to find out. So for some reason, everybody has a destiny. You can't escape your destiny. I got caught into it, hook, line, and sinker. When I came back and told my parents, Mom, Dad, I don't want to be a dentist anymore. I don't know what I want to be, maybe a rabbi. Oy vey, what a scene. Even the dog started to cry. It was awful. But let me tell you, Rabbi, as a rabbi, you know you still have to pull a lot of teeth.
That's for sure.
That's part of the profession.
So your mother's still happy that you're a dentist in some ways?
Well, now after years, they're very proud that I'm a rabbi and all the work that I do.
And you're married, you have a family?
Thank God I have 6 kids.
Oh, wonderful.
And really I have a unique experience because I've seen all the sides. I've seen the non-Orthodox, the modern Orthodox, the total right wing, and I see the world as an entirety that I can achieve the balance.
Right.
And that's really what is crucial. Dealing with Har Sinai, what is a crucial event of Har Sinai? It's Jewish, Mount Sinai, Jewish education. I've been in the business of teaching for over 25 years, and many parents come to me and they're upset about their kids assimilating, and young people I meet, very nice, fine young people.
But with no direction.
No direction, but the problem is Jews don't reject Judaism out of choice. They reject it out of ignorance.
Exactly.
And what we have created in Merrick is something extremely unique. When you walk into a Beis HaMedrash, a study hall, and you see the volumes of Jewish law, Jewish history, all these, it's not like old ones that have dust, 3/4 of an inch of dust on top of it, new books, and you walk into the flavor, what do you expect to see? You expect to see something out of one of the movies, A Stranger Amongst Us, a group of young men dressed in kapatas with the long payas, with hats and everything.
Like Fiddler on the Roof.
Right, Fiddler on the Roof. Like these guys are totally out of touch with reality.
Right.
But you come in, you see my students, are all college-oriented. They all go to college. They could quote you the latest Knicks scores. They could tell you about what's going on. They're very aware. And yet they're committed to their Judaism, and they're serious about integrating Torah, Judaism, and a secular life. Mm-hmm. And that's what people are missing. I deal with, and I'm sure you do too, with many people that are very successful. But unless a person could get in touch with their spiritual self, they realize they're not just a physical being, there's something more to it than that, then they're not going to be happy, they're not going to be fulfilled, they're not going to be satisfied.
I think this is a key point because unfortunately, of course, as you're well aware, there are too many people who are out there and they buy the whole suburban story of success, lock, stock, and barrel, and end up reaching the pinnacle of success and then realize that they're empty inside. Right. And until they can integrate something a little bit deeper into their life, where there be a look into the message of Torah, a little bit into their soul, a little bit about Jewish mysticism, whatever the message might be, somehow connect to who they are, then that emptiness is going to always stay with them.
You know what I find is something very interesting? You're dealing with men and women that are very educated, they're good people, yet they're afraid. They're very much afraid. Mm-hmm. When I deal with people, I deal with a lot of people, and one of my people that I deal with that gains a lot, I'm not out to make people Orthodox. I just want to say a public statement that that's not my goal. My goal is to educate and to bring everybody to the level that they want. Right. To make a person do something or be someone they're not. That's the worst thing you could do to them. Right. So let's say I have somebody studying by me. He brings it home to his family. He feels good about it. Then he goes and he talks to a friend of his. Says, would you like to meet my rabbi? The first thing to say is, do I have to become Orthodox? That's the first. It's like a knee-jerk impulse.
Does he have a beard?
Does he what am I going to have to do? What do I have to do? Nothing. You see, many people, even they're very successful, have this extreme inferiority complex that they don't know Hebrew. They don't know their traditions. So people who excel in their various fields, and we're talking about people who are really high up, are just afraid to come in because they feel they'll be looked down upon.
But they don't realize so many of the different institutions today, like yours or ours, are made for Judaism for dummies. So in
Right.
other words, not to say that they're dummies, obviously,
No,
but where they can at least feel comfortable knowing that there's no expectation whatsoever made upon them, and that they can come in whatever level they're at, and they'll be accepted for who they are and what they
Right.
know.
The key to success when you're dealing with people is to respect people for who they are.
And this is in any area.
In every area.
Right.
The interpersonal relationship is crucial. But the point of the matter is, people have to work on improving themselves. Learning about Judaism isn't just like opening up a book and learning history and just learning a science. It's something which creates a self-growth which makes you a better person. When I was in Great Neck, we had the yeshiva in Great Neck for a period of time. There was a person similar to this that it wasn't an Orthodox program, but they did public interest type slots.
Right.
So she heard about my yeshiva and the work we were doing in the community, and she came up and she wanted to do a spot for the yeshiva.
Right.
So I told her that our goal is to improve people's lives, to work on them to become more righteous and things to that nature. So you know what she told me? Very nice lady. She said, Rabbi, if you told me how religion could make your sex life better, or how religion can go and make you lose weight, that would capture the public's interest. But to tell people how to become righteous? Who wants to hear that? And that's the problem. The problem is success is not defined on how much money you have in the bank. Success is not defined on how many materialistic objects you have. Success is defined as how good a person you are and how you could interact with others. Where are you going to be able to sit down for a short period of time during the week and stop and learn and learn? That's what Mount Sinai is all about. Mm-hmm. We have after the holiday of Passover, which is the freedom, the redemption of the Jewish people from slavery, a universal concept. It took 49 days until they went to Mount Sinai. Why 49 days? You know, God could get everybody 1, 2, 3, put them in the limos and drive them right over to Mount Sinai. Why 49 days? And the answer is, today we live in the instant chicken soup generation.
Right.
You know, you take a Telma
Spontaneous
cube.
gratification.
Right. You do take a Telma cube, you know, kosher little Telma cube. You stick it in hot water. What does it taste like? Instant chicken soup. You want to have good chicken soup, you take a nice plump chicken. You put it in a big pot. You put in the vegetables. You let it simmer. You put in the spices. And what happens? You have chicken soup. That's the same thing. If we make a New Year's resolution, we're going to be better, we're going to lose weight, we're going to stop smoking, this and that, the very next day it's going to be gone. Because people don't understand who they are, what they are. The key to Jewish education, the key to Jewish success is to be a good person. If a person just wants to come and study, I tell my students all the time, you just want to learn the Talmud. You just want to go and study and grow in your Jewish knowledge. Without changing as a person, without understanding who you are, or your place within the world, within the community, then your Jewish learning is not going to reach the level that it should.
It's an academic study.
It can't be an academic
That's
study.
right. That's right.
And that's
and
why
I think this is the main misconception that has to be dispelled. When we talk
Correct.
about Torah, and we talk about Shavous, which
Right.
is a holiday coming up, when we talk about being Jewish and being observant,
Right.
it has to be that this is reality. This is not just a matter of, well, if I do a couple of rituals here and there, and I go to the shul or go to synagogue 3 times a year, I'm going through the motions.
Right.
No, Judaism is the eyeglasses that you wear. It's the way you see. It's the way you perceive. It's how you deal with people. It's how you're a mensch, as they say. How you're a real person dealing in the world, whether it be in business, whether it be with your wife or spouse, or whether it be with your children, whether it be just with yourself. How you see yourself in the world and your purpose in the world.
Right. If you notice, when you look at the passages in connection to Mount Sinai, it's a very interesting passage. It talks about the Jewish people encamping by the base of the mountain.
Yes.
And it uses a singular tense. It uses the word vayichan. The proper grammatical tense for plurality is vayachanu.
Right.
Plural. Why does it say vayichan? So our rabbis tell us that at that point the Jewish people were one. They were one heart, one soul. And in order for us to have an appropriate Kabbalas Torah, an accepting of the Torah per se, to prepare ourselves, not only do we have to prepare ourselves spiritually as individuals, it's crucial that we care about someone else. And the way to succeed in Judaism is basically being a united people. Now, obviously, we have our differences, but it's like what I tell my students when they go and they get married. you're going to have arguments. You're not going to have arguments. I'd like the arguments of my students to be, the wife says, I want to take out the garbage, and the husband says, I want to take out the garbage. But let's say it's on a more serious level. You have to learn how to disagree. You have to agree on how to disagree. That's the crucial aspect when you're dealing with two people of various opinions. And in order for us to have a Kabbalas Torah, an accepting of the Torah, we have to be concerned about everyone else, even though they may not be doing what we perceive is what they should be doing. We have to be ready to accept them for who they are and what they are.
And this is one of the things, of course, I'm sure that you develop in your students.
Correct.
Because, of course, in the study of the Talmud and the study of the Torah that was given in Mount Sinai, we go into great depth to show how there can be many, many different perspectives, all perfectly valid on one particular issue, and go and delve into each of those different perspectives and understand where each of the rabbis is coming from in order to develop that thought, that line of thought, and see its legitimacy standing on its own 2 feet.
Right. You have to know the learning of the Talmud is a very unique learning methodology. It's a very unique studying techniques and encompasses a tremendous amount of thought process. Many times I've had people who are excelled in their field, mathematicians, scientists, and they've come and learned the Talmud, and they were just amazed how much depth and how much understanding there is. But what's the whole purpose? When we deal with subjects which are really antiquated, that really aren't relevant, what's the purpose of it all? The answer is plain and simple. Unless a person learns how to think, unless they could use their mind to its fullest extent, they cannot appreciate the world around them, and they cannot appreciate another individual. We have to train our minds to think, to see the glory of the world, to see God in action, to see where our lives are heading. I always tell my students like this. Unfortunately, the way people live their lives is like a rocket ship. You start out, NASA has made tremendous progress. They want to go to Mars now. Let's say they want to go to the moon. And the trajectory is off just a few millimeters, small amount. And then this plane keeps on going, but they don't correct the trajectory. The spaceship is not going to land up on the moon. It's going to end up on Mars. And that's the same thing in life. People start out at a certain position in life. They have goals. They look 10 years back down on their lives and they say, where did I go wrong? And the answer to that is they have not corrected themselves along the way.
But it's also a message, I think, for the parents. Because like the Rebbe pointed out, when you take a seed, if you would make a small little scratch on that seed, it might not appear like very much at that time. But once that seed grows, of course, the scratch becomes great. So the responsibility of the parents from a very young age is to cultivate and to take care of those seeds which are their children and make sure that they are not exposed to those scratches and those scars that could develop later on in years into terrible, terrible
Right, but when you talk about parents and children, I say the education of the parents of the children is not the parents educating the children. It's the parents educating themselves. Albert Schweitzer was once asked, how do you educate a child? And he said, there are 3 things you need. The first thing you need to do and educate a child is to be an example. The second thing you have to do is be an example. And the third thing you have to do is be an example. And that's the way it is. Raising children, people don't want to have children. They want to have children as pets today. You know, have a nice little Cabbage Patch doll.
I don't know about
I'm
that.
not saying everybody. No, I don't want to be radical. This is like, you know, it's going out to the masses. But basically, what does it mean having a child? The only way you could raise a child properly is by setting the example, raising yourself. So many people go through life without responsibilities. They don't have to answer to too many people. When you get married, you have a little more of answerability, but basically your spouse is who they are. But now you have the obligation to develop this young individual into a responsible adult. That's not going to happen by himself.
And that responsibility is perhaps greater even today because of the fact that once that child walks out of your front door, the exposure that that child can have to every possible mishigas and craziness in the world is so intense, it's incredible. In fact, in the house, of course, itself now, with internet and with television, video, so forth and so on, so that the parent for sure has a responsibility of being the model and setting the example from a very, very young age. And as you know, that I'm sure with your children and my children, that this thought process that you were referring to, which is part of the yeshiva process, begins from a very young age. We have children from the time they're 8 years old who are learning how to think in a legal process. What does it mean? What is right and wrong? What are ethics all about? How do we relate to an individual? What is the proper way to argue out a disagreement?
Correct.
And this is a process which we learn, of course, from the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai,
Right.
of God making a presentation and showing his people this is right and this is wrong. Not as a monolithic black and white situation, but as a way of having our people cultivated and growing to be able to become a nation that can achieve, hopefully, greatness.
Right. Well, definitely. These are opportune times, but as you know, they say in business, you get what you pay for. You go into one of these $99 stores and get a beautiful dining room set. Don't expect it to last past 2 weeks.
Right.
That's the same thing in education. If you want a child who's going to respect you in your old age, because what do you really have when you're older? You've made your money, you have your honor. What do you have left? You have your children. Mm-hmm. And if you don't put in the time and effort when they're growing up, they're not going to be there. Mm-hmm. So even though it may take away from your fun, from your leisure, from your activities now, you have to put into it. And that's one of the tremendous moral lessons that we see.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question,
Yes.
Rabbi Rhodes.
Yes.
Can people just come into yeshiva, call you up, and be able to make an appointment and come down and learn with one of the yeshiva students?
Sure. That's that my whole concept of yeshiva is to have an interactive, community-oriented group.
Okay, good. So what I'd like you to do is give us your phone number so that
Okay.
people will be able to call you if they're in the area or if they just want to experience what this yeshiva is all about, because it's very different than, of course, a day school.
Correct.
It's very different than a college or like a
Right.
yeshiva university type of environment.
Mhm.
It's a chavrusa style. Chavrusa meaning there's one-on-one discussion that goes on a regular basis. So tell
Right.
us your phone number.
Okay, my phone number is 516-292-3961.
Okay.
And basically, if anyone wants to come in and talk and discuss what life is all about, we'll see what we could do.
Okay.
Right now, we're not starting out per se, but we have tremendous growth
Great.
that we are, and with God's help, we plan to
And
grow even greater.
Students are available to learn on a one-on-one basis
Yes,
if
we
necessary.
we arrange that. We have many
Okay.
children in the community, many adults in the community coming in.
That would be wonderful. Now, of course, let me just get back to
Yes.
the holiday that's coming
Correct.
up. We have Passover.
Yes.
We count 49 days. Of course,
Yes.
we also have Lag Bomer, which maybe you can tell us very quickly
Yes.
what Lag Bomer is, which is, of course, during the course of the counting of the 49 days.
Lag BaOmer is the 49 days has two levels to it. The counting from the time of the Passover until the Shavous holiday. Basically, it's a preparation because you just can't go to higher levels of spirituality, just jump into it. It's like going into a hot tub. If you're not
Right.
prepared, it's going to
There's
not do you
a
any
period
good.
of refinement, because these were coming from a slave
Right, they were
mentality,
slave
working
mentality,
up towards
correct.
being experiencing the higher level
Correct.
of revelation that we
Correct.
ever
So it had to
made.
be, you couldn't just give them all, you would shock their system.
Right.
But unfortunately, during this time period also, a great tragedy happened to the Jewish people. The tragedy was there was a tremendous rabbi called Rabbi Akiva, and he had many students. And unfortunately, because his students didn't act appropriately to each other on their tremendous level, there was a tremendous plague and 24,000 students passed away. So even though this is a time of tremendous revelation, spiritual revelation, it's also a time of mourning, national mourning. That's such a great loss. But there are tremendous lessons to be learned from that. A Lag BaOmer is generally accepted as a time when they did stop dying, the pestilence stopped, and the Jewish people were able to rebuild. I see the flexibility of the Jewish people, no matter what tragedy befalls them, even if the leaders are taken away, they always have the ability to go back. In fact, there's something very interesting. If you look at the passages when Moses didn't come down from Mount Sinai,
Right.
and the Jewish people panicked, basically. They didn't know what to do, so they reverted to the old ways of idolatry. They made a golden calf, and God was pretty upset. You could understand why he was upset, you know.
A little bit of a slap in the face.
Yeah, he made this whole revelation. All of a sudden, you know, Moses had to go down there and break the commandments and break the tablets.
Right.
It wasn't too nice. So God said, he said, I don't want to be with you guys. I'll send my angel to be with you guys. And he says, because you're a stiff-necked people. So Moses argued with him and back and forth until finally God said, okay, I'll go. I'll have my presence amongst you. So Moses said to God, he said, God, these Jews are a stiff-necked people, so you should be with us. So it seems a contradiction. First, God calls them a stiff-necked people in a derogatory sense, and Moses is using it in a positive sense. And the answer is it's a plus, like any character trait is a plus and a minus. Being stubborn, being chutzpahdik, being unpleasant is bad in many ways if you're using it for a negative purpose. But to be stubborn in your beliefs, to go against any obstacle, that's a plus. And the Jewish people are a stiff-necked people to survive all the adversity that has happened to us throughout the years and to create what is created now. If you look on Long Island, I'm sure you've been in Long Island for a long time. Look 20 years ago, it's a totally different place.
Sure.
There's opportunities today, and I'm telling the television audience out there, don't waste the opportunities. You have tremendous rabbis throughout the island, tremendous opportunities. Now is the time. Don't feel in any shape or form that you're inadequate because you don't know.
You sound like me doing my closing for
Well,
the show.
let me tell you, I didn't know. I didn't know. Look at me
Right.
now. If somebody went to my father and mother when they first got married and they said, you know, your son's going to be a rabbi, they would say, what? You got to be kidding. You never know.
That's
Each
right.
and every one of you out there has the opportunity for spiritual greatness and happiness. The doors are open. God's hand is extended. It's time to grab it.
Right.
Especially in this spiritually elevating time between Passover and Shavous.
100%. And for Shavous, although unfortunately for many Jews, of course, Shavous is not a major holiday, although it is considered one of the three biggies during the course of the year.
Right, definitely.
So it's a great opportunity, I think, for somebody to see the synagogue in a little bit of a different light at a time where it's not as crowded, it's not as serious or heavy as perhaps Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur might be, where there's a real moment of inspiration, because at that time a person can connect to God, connect to the mitzvot, the commandments, connect to the Torah in a very unique way, and use it as a springboard for being able to say, okay, listen, this is the time I really want to grow as a Jew, and I want to find out what are these mitzvahs all about? What really happened on Sunday? How does it affect me? How can it make my life better, more fulfilling? How can I become a better parent as a result? And just as you said, the message of the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai, which we'll be celebrating soon, is one which applies to every single individual in the world and every single Jew in the world, wherever they might be at this time.
Right, but and you could take it to a deeper level, because when God created man, created Adam, it says he blew into man a spirit of life.
Right.
And what does that mean? When you blow, something comes out of you. So what is the essence of our spirituality? We're a part of God.
Right.
What makes us tick? It's that godliness.
Right. Very good. That's a quote from the Zohar, I believe.
That's correct.
Right. So listen, I want to thank you very much, Rabbi Rhodes. I wish you the best of luck and much success in your endeavors. Meantime, as Rabbi Rhodes mentioned, we have many rabbis from all ilks all over Long Island. We have 14 Chabad rabbis all over the island. I want to just give you the address for our Chabad house in Comac at 58 Comac Road in Comac, New York. The number is 462-7383. Call us anytime for any need you might have, any question you might have about any location or any place you might want to find out more about Judaism. In addition, of course, we have our website, chabadli.org, which you can please write down and look us up next time you're on the internet. And of course, anytime you want to pick up a phone, except for Shabbos, just dial 76 Super for a great computer-driven menu of all about Judaism and many other options that you can have. Meantime, I want to wrap up with Rabbi Rhodes' statement. Go on, check it out, find out what that whisper, that voice from inside is all about. Take it out from within and check it out with a lot of other different people around you to find out what it means that the Torah was given in Mount Sinai, that God revealed himself to 3 million people, and you were one of them. Standing there in Mount Sinai, if not you in your body, then you in your soul. And that's something that personally relates to you as an individual. Rabbi Rhodes, thank you very much. We'll see you next week at the Jewish Spotlight. And in the meantime, do something good. Make your world, make your community, make your life a better place through Torah. Shalom. See you next week.